Before we start with the Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Dearest Venerable Teacher, dearest Sangha, good afternoon. Today we will continue on the Eightfold Path. For the past couple months we've discussed the Four Noble Truths and the 3 poisons, which are the 3 poisons that we try to eradicate using the Eightfold Path. So today we are covering the first of the 8, which is right view. Right view in the Eightfold Path is categorized in 3 categories for the most part. So it's under wisdom or prajna, morality, sila, and meditation, samadhi. And so right view is under the first category of wisdom. So right view is in all the lists in Buddhism, because Buddhism is full of lists, right? You have the 3 jewels, the 5 precepts, the Eightfold Path, the 6 perfections, a whole bunch of lists. And for the most part, these lists, the numbering in these lists aren't very important. Whereas, what I mean by is they don't have to go in a specific order. The Eightfold Path, however, on the other hand, is a yes and no, has to go in kind of an order, but the right view, for the most part, is always first. And any commentary we read, any book that we read, or any teaching, right view is typically always first. Because right view is the deep understanding of the Four Noble Truths. It's the deep understanding of how things really are, right? So it's understanding exactly how what the Four Noble Truths are and how they work, right? Knowing that in life there's suffering, the cause of our suffering, the way out of the suffering, and the path to end that suffering. And so right view, samyak drishti in Sanskrit, is the ability to work on our mind, the ability to see things as impermanent and imperfect, right? And it's also the ability to distinguish wholesome roots from unwholesome roots, right? So in each of us, we all have wholesome and unwholesome roots, or seeds, right? Sometimes we hear the phrase, sowing the seeds of our consciousness, or sowing the seeds of our merit, right? And so within each of our consciousness, if we water these seeds, for instance, of loyalty or of harmony, then we are developing those wholesome seeds, right? So you may have the seeds of loyalty and trust within you, but you also have the opposite. You also have the seeds of distress and betrayal, right? But depending on our environment, right, if you water those wholesome seeds, then you'll be a wholesome person. You'll be a trustworthy and loyal person. But at the same time, even because we have those unwholesome seeds as well, if you ignore those, or you don't work on not watering those, and even if you don't want to be disloyal or distrusting, you may still do so to those that you care about or love, right? Because of those seeds, because of how much they've been watered in the past or how strong they are, even though you may not want to do them, you may still do it anyway, because those seeds are strong. They're deeply rooted in our consciousness. And so we use the practice of mindfulness to help us identify all these seeds in our stored consciousness. And when we start to later on practice more Buddhism and practice going to deeper topics and subjects and the psychology of Buddhism, we'll come across a teaching of the 8 consciousnesses, right, the Vijnanas. And the 8th consciousness, the Alaya Vijnana, the storehouse consciousness. So the first 6 are our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Those are the 6 consciousnesses. The 7th consciousness is where they all come together and do their thing, right? And the eighth consciousness is pretty much like this the memory bank. This eighth consciousness is where it stores all the deeds and misdeeds, the wholesome roots, the unwholesome roots of our current and past lives. So this eighth consciousness is what moves with us from life to life. And so we'll forget everything we've done in the first seven, but the eighth is always with us. So we can look into our life and see the good things in it, the bad things in it, and we can kind of determine, based on our life, how our karma is, how our karma was developed in past lives, based on how wholesome or unwholesome, good or bad our life is. But the seed of Buddhahood, right, the capacity to wake up, to understand things as they really are, is also within us, right? It's present in each of us. And so when we see each other and we bow to each other, we're bowing to each other's Buddha nature. We're bowing to each other's Buddhahood seed, right? In many sutras, especially in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha always mentions, especially when he's giving a teaching or a prophecy of future monks becoming Buddhas, he'll say that this disciple of mine has bowed down to hundreds of thousands of 10,000s of millions of Buddhas. That's an astronomical number to think about, right? Because you're like, how is there so many Buddhas in the universe, right? But it's because we bow down to each person, right? So there's, 15 people in this room? So if I'm bowing down to each of you, I'm bowing down to 15 Buddhas, future Buddhas. You may not be a Buddha now, but eventually you'll become a Buddha. So that counts as bowing down to all these thousands and millions of Buddhas. But at the base of our views of all these ideas are our perceptions, samjna in Sanskrit. And the Buddha always advised us that we should not be fooled by what we perceive. And he told one of his main disciples, Subhuti, that when there is perception, there's deception. When there is perception, there's deception, right? And the Buddha has always taught many times that most of our perceptions are erroneous, and that most of our suffering comes from these wrong perceptions. And so that's why we always have to ask ourselves, am I sure? Is this right? Is this correct view? Is this correct perception? Right? We're always questioning ourselves when we go through things or think of things. And to perceive always means to perceive something, right? And so we believe that the object of our perception is always outside of the subject. It's always outside of ourselves. But in Buddhism, that's not correct. So when we perceive the moon, right, when we look at the moon, we should know that the moon is us. The moon is the object of our perception. When we look at the statue is the object of our perception. The bell is the object of our perception. And eventually, as we go through Buddhist practice and go deeper into the teachings and the psychology of Buddhism, then we can get to a point where we can say that I can see my consciousness in this flower, right? Which means that we can see the sun, the water, and the earth that make up this flower, right? This flower is not if we have to ask ourselves, well, how is my consciousness in this flower, right? How is this flower my consciousness, right? And the flower is our consciousness. It's the object of our perception, because we know this is a flower because our mind does this little thing and connects with little ones and zeros, right? And says, this is a flower. Because the world, society, us, we call it a flower. But this is simply just my perception. Because I can call it a flower, someone else can call it a plant. Someone else can call it a tree that has red leaves, right? We all have different ideas and perceptions of what we can call it. But the flower that we're looking at is part of our consciousness. So the idea that our consciousness is outside of the flower needs to be removed, right? It's impossible to have a subject without an object, right? Like a correct grammatical sentence. But the source of our perception, our way of seeing things, lies in our soul consciousness, in the alaya vijnana. So if we were all to go outside, for instance, and look up at the sky, look at the clouds, we're all going to have a different perception of what we're seeing. I can see a dog, you can see a cat, you can see a house, you can see a Buddha, you can see a heart, etc., right? It all depends on our mind. It depends on how our mind is. Are we happy? Are we sad? Are we depressed? Are we angry? Right? So depending on what we're going through is going to determine how we perceive things. And so our perceptions with them carry the airs of subjectivity. And because those perceptions have subjectivity, then we start to blame, we can praise, we can condemn, right? Depending on how our perceptions are. And how our afflictions are, right? Which is the 3 poisons: ignorance, greed, and anger. So depending on how strong those poisons are will largely determine how we perceive things. So whether we're happy, whether we're sad, again, depends on how we are mentally, in mental state. So the sooner that we're able to, the more diligently we're able to practice mindfulness and meditation in our path, the sooner we're able to recognize those unwholesome or wholesome mindsets and either water the wholesome seeds or work on removing the unwholesome ones, right? And last week, was it last week we had a retreat? So last week, was it last week? It was last week, okay. I lose time. Last week in our retreat, we talked kind of a big deal about happiness, causes of happiness, right? And that we have this idea of happiness. We have this idea that our happiness come in the conditions that are outside somewhere, right? The very idea of our happiness is what causes us to really not be happy, right? Because we think that the fancy car, the big house, the dream job, everything that we want and need will bring us happiness. But because we don't understand and don't recognize and see the impermanence in these things, we can't see how really unhappy they'll make us, right? So once we come to that realization that those things out there is not true happiness, happiness is a mental state, this is neither perception nor non-perception, right? It is a clear vision of seeing things how they really are. And so based on our perceptions, there was a pretty well-known story, or not story, but example that we can explain to someone how an orange tastes, right? We can go into full detail and give a really good description of how an orange tastes, but we can't give them that direct experience of how the orange tastes, right? We can only give them our own ideas of how an orange tastes, right? So the moment we say anything to describe how an orange tastes, we're already caught up in wrong view. We're already caught up in wrong perception. Last week during dinner or something on a retreat, me and Meda and I were trying to describe to someone what one of the Vietnamese desserts tastes like. It's like a gelatin dessert that comes in different shapes and sizes and colors and has no real taste to it. But she was trying to describe it to him. And after like a few seconds, I realized, like, why am I trying to describe it to you? There's like, I can describe all I want, but you're never going to know what it really tastes like. So I'm just going to sit there and let Meda make a fool of herself and just talk. I'm just kidding. But that's the point, right? That our perceptions, our ideas of something is our own, and they could be right, or they could be wrong. And if you come to the temple for a day, for the first time, or for the service, right, you have an idea of the temple, but that idea isn't really the temple, right? You can say that, oh, I've been to Pho Quay Temple. But in fact, you've only been to your idea of the Pho Quay Temple. You may have a better idea than someone else who's never been to the temple, but it's still an idea, right? And so but your idea is not really the temple. It's just an idea. You have an idea of how the services work, who's here, who are the monks, who are the nuns. You have just an idea, but that's not the real temple, right? So your concept or perception of reality is not really reality. You're just caught in your perception and ideas, and you lose reality. And so the practice is to go beyond these ideas so that you can arrive at the suchness of things. I'm reading a quote here. So no idea is the path of non-conception. So as long as there is an idea, there is no reality, there's no truth. No idea means no wrong idea, no wrong conception. It does not mean no mindfulness, because if we know something is right, then it's right. If we know something is wrong, it's wrong, right? And I always bring an example of in meditation, right? So when we're sitting in meditation and we are using our breath as the object of meditation, right? We're breathing in, we're breathing out, we're counting, or you're just focusing on the sensations in your body as you meditate. This is meditation, but as soon as an idea arises or a distraction arises, and you think to yourself, oh, I'm thinking of cake right now, or I'm thinking of lunch, and you're thinking, oh, this is wrong meditation. But what do I always say when a distraction arises? Okay, at least like half of you have been here last week, and I went over this like at least 5 times. I'm sorry? Label it, right? The simple fact of labeling is already correct meditation because you've recognized that a distraction has arisen, right? So we always hear, or I always hear people tell me, oh, I'm thinking too much in meditation. I'm like, okay, you're doing exactly what you're doing. You are aware that you're thinking, so how's that wrong? You're already being mindful. Mindfulness is meditation. So if you're mindful of your thinking, then you're meditating. Whether thoughts are there or no thoughts are there, the mindfulness, the awareness that you know that there's thinking or distraction is meditation. So you're truly not doing it wrong. You're doing exactly what you need to do. And that is correct meditation, right? So relatively speaking, there are right views and there are wrong views, but if we're able to truly dig deeper and contemplate, then we're able to see that all views are wrong views. No view can ever be the truth, right? It's just from one point, which is why we call it a point of view. But if you're able to look at it from a different point, from a different side, then you can see something differently. And then you can recognize and say, oh, maybe my first point wasn't all that correct, all that right. And in Buddhism, of course, it's not a collection of views. It's just a way, it's a practice to help us see the errors in our wrong views, to help us eliminate those wrong views. And then once we're able to recognize that, then we can improve the quality of those views, right? These are just views, we can change them. We can change the perception we have on different things, people, and places in our practice, right? So the viewpoint of ultimate reality, of right view is the absence of all views, right? The viewpoint of ultimate reality of right view is the absence of all views. Tathagata means one with no views. Well, not literally, but we interpret Tathagata, right, the Buddha, as one with no views. As our views, our perceptions are either right or wrong. And if my views of something, if my views of a flower is one way, and Bobby's views of a flower is another way, then who's right? Who's more correct? Both of us? Neither of us? And so if we have to ask ourselves that question, then none of our views are correct views. And so when we practice Buddhism, and I bring up the example of the dirty mirror or the foggy mirror, right? So our Buddhahood is like a foggy mirror, as if we were just to get out of the shower, right? The room is steamy, the mirror is steamed up, and so we try to clean that mirror off a little bit. So maybe we use our wet towel and we try to clean the mirror a little bit, but it's still streaky, it leaves little lint and prints, right? But it's still a little bit clearer. Maybe then we use a dry towel. We wipe it, it's a little bit streaky, and we got rid of some of the lint, but it's still a little bit clearer. Then we use our hand. We get rid of the lint, but it's a little bit foggy, right? So we're using different tools, different methods to clean that mirror. Likewise, when we practice Buddhism, we practice the Eightfold Path and put it into true action, true practice, then we are likewise cleaning off that Buddha mirror. And the more we clean, the clearer we're able to see that true Buddha nature in ourselves. It may take a very long time, right? But it's still there. It's going to happen. Our lives are relatively short, right? 100 years typically maximum, between 80 and 100, right? My goal is 108, so 108 years old. But compared to the age of the universe or solar system, it's not even a fraction of a second. Not even a fraction of a second. We mean nothing, right? And so the more we practice, the more we're able to help better ourselves in this life and future lives, right? Because remember, the alaya consciousness, the storehouse consciousness, is what houses all our practice, right? All our good deeds, all our bad deeds is stored there. And so for future lives, those lives are going to have that baggage with them, right? So the more good baggage you have, the more wholesome deeds and merits you have, the better that future life is going to be. The easier it is going to be for you to not only encounter Buddhism, but to also practice Buddhism, right? And the earlier you are able to practice and encounter Buddhism, the earlier you are, the better, the quicker you're able to better yourself, better your mental states, better your livelihood, right? And as we go through the Eightfold Path, we'll see that they all need to work together, right? They're not individual practices where we have to master one and then move on to another, right? They all work holistically. Right view has to complement right thinking. Right thinking has to complement right speech. Right speech has to complement right action, right livelihood, right intention, right concentration, right mindfulness, right? They all have to work together. That's what makes it a noble path, right? You can't just pick and choose what you want, right? I'm going to choose today right speech, so I won't lie, but tomorrow I have to work, so I'm going to lie tomorrow, right? Or today's a holy day, so I won't kill something, but tomorrow's a Monday, it's a brand new week, I can kill ants or a deer, I don't know, whatever, right? They all have to work together holistically. And when we're able to do that and put it into action and really apply those teachings to our life, then it's easier to have them become more natural, more habitual in our life, right? Because remember, in a way, you're reprogramming your mind. Most of us, I'm sure, haven't been raised Buddhist, right? And so Buddhism is a new concept to many of us. And whether you've come to it early in life, midlife, or late in life, you have past experiences, past habits that you have to kind of override, because maybe those thinking and those concepts, those ideas are wrong, right? And so you have to override them. But they're not easily overridden because they're habitually sunk in that store consciousness, right? Okay, I'm checking the time. So that is right view. I feel like I went at it at a very psychological point of view, but I think that's better because really Buddhism is a mind-centered religion, right? It's more a psychology. So the better we're able to see how life works, how life is, the easier it is for us to be able to see things as they truly are, right? I want to give the road rage example, but I feel like I always give the road rage example. So I have to come up with a new example. That's the only one that I am able to associate myself with. But again, if you haven't heard my road rage example, same thing when you're road raging, or if you're on the road and someone's road raging you, right, cut you off. Our habit, our first thought is to curse them out, flip them off, raise hell for them, right? Wish them ill will, etc., etc. But that's our perception, because our perception is, how dare you cut me off? I'm going somewhere important too. Maybe you're thinking your time is more precious than their time. I'm trying to go to work. I'm trying to go to school. I'm trying to go to the temple. How dare you cut me off and waste my time? Ooh, a whole 5 seconds. Big deal. But we don't care about 5 seconds. 5 seconds is like a lifetime for many people. But then we don't know, because we don't know why they cut us off. We're already thinking these negative thoughts, right? We're thinking how we're better than them, etc. But because we don't know who they are, what they're going through, we don't know what their life story is. Maybe there's someone trying to give birth in the back seat. You don't know. Maybe someone's bleeding out to death. We don't know. Maybe they have to rush to the hospital. We don't know. We don't know. So why are you making something up for them? Why are you angry for something you don't know? Makes no sense. If you really think about it, makes no sense. But we do that all the time for many things. We get upset over the most random stuff. But if we're able to stop, be mindful of our thinking, what's happening, what's coming up, why it's coming up, right? Remember my why meditation. Always ask yourself, why? Why am I feeling like this? Why is this happening? Why am I thinking these thoughts? Why is my mind going to a specific place, right? And if you're able to dig deep enough to find that core reason, then it'll be easier for you to figure out why you feel that way. And you can do something about it. Either get rid of it somehow, lessen whatever the cause is, whatever it may be, right? But now you at least have a pinpointed place to work with. You have something tangible to work with. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. Any questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? Since it's almost Christmas time, I think everybody wants to outburst a little bit. Okay, well, if there's no questions, then we will transfer the merit and go into chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment.
The general service. Inviting the bell. Bodhi,
speech and mind in perfect oneness, I send my heart along with the sound of the may the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home.
Incense offering. In
gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. May it be fresh
opening verse. The
Incense in the censer now is burning, all the Dharma realm in every place. Auspicious clouds appearing, our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattvas.
verses for bowing. We bow together. Homage
to the eternally abiding Buddha,
the Supreme Dharma,
and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time.
Homage
to the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya, honored future Buddha, Manjushri, great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal great conduct Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
homage
to Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, earth sword, great vow Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea like Bodhisattva.
Please sit down. The great compassion mantra. Namo.
Great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Namo, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Namo, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Namo Ratnatrayaya. Namo Arya Avalokiteshvaraya.
Bodhisattvaya, Mahasattvaya, Mahakarunikaya, Ravaya, Sudanadasya, Namoskritva Himavarya, Avalokiteshvara Ramdava, Namo sarva-arhato shubham ajiyam sarva-sattva namo vastava namo vakamavetato taryata om avaloki lokate karate hiri mahabodhisattva sarva sarva mana mana mahi mahi hridayam kuru kuru karmam doro doro vijate mahavijate dara dara dirini shvaraya chana chana mama vimana muktelehi ehi shina shina asham prashari vishvavi holo holo mara holo holo he sara sara siri siri soro soro bodhiya bodhiya bodhaya bodhaya maitreya narakindi krishanina vayamana swaha siddhaya swaha mahasiddhaya swaha siddhayoge shvaraya swaha narakindi swaha maranara swaha sirasimha mokaya swaha sarva mahasiddhaya swaha chakraha siddhaya swaha padmakastaya narakindi vagalaya swaha mavari sankaraya swaha namo ratnatrayaya namo arya valokite shavaraya swaha om siryanto mantra padaya swaha.
The Dhamma
Body is bringing morning light and concentration. My heart is at peace. A half smile is born on my lips. This is a new day, and I vow to in mindfulness. The sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble Sangha, diligently bring your mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamunaye Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Buddhaya.
verses from the opening sutra, the
Surpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.
touching the earth, the one who
bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice center is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas as my own person reflects in all Buddhas, to whom with my whole life I go for refuge.
offering
light in the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Teaching
And living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion, Shakyamuni Buddha, the awakened, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Cutting
Through ignorance, awakening our hearts and our minds, Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Working
Mindfully working joyfully for the sake of all beings, Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva of great action, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Responding
To suffering, serving beings in countless ways, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, to whom we bow in gratitude.
seed of
Awakening and loving kindness in children, sprouts, and all beings, Maitreya, the Buddha, to be born, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Showing
The way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of all our ancestral teachers, to whom we bow in gratitude.
The Dhamma
Is deep and lovely, we now have a chance to see it and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning.
of the Pranaparamita. The Bodhisattva Avalokita,
while moving in the deep course of Prajnaparamita, shed light on the 5 skandhas and found them equally. After this penetration, he overcame ill-being. Listen, Shariputra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore in empty there is neither form nor feelings, no perceptions nor mental formations, nor consciousness, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of elements, no interdependent origins, and no extinction, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, no attainment, because there is no attainment. The Bodhisattva's ground in Prajnaparamita find no obstacles. No obstacles, they overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore one should know that perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible truth, the mantra of Prajnaparamita should therefore claim Gate gate bodhi swaha gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha.
Invoking the Bodhisattva name, we invoke your name.
Avalokiteshvara, we aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering in the world. You know how to. In order to understand, we invoke your name. In order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness, we will sit and listen without judging. Judas, we will sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to understand. We will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear what the other person is saying and also what is being left unsaid. We know that just by listening deeply, we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in the other person.
We invoke
your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the heart of things and in the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will look with unprejudiced. We will look without judging or reacting. We will look deeply so that we will be able to and understand the roots of suffering through the impermanent and selfless nature of that is. We will practice your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of suffer, thus freeing ourselves and other species.
We invoke
your name, Samanta Bhadra. We aspire to practice your vow to act with the eyes and heart of compassion, to bring joy to one person in the morning and to ease the pain of one person in the afternoon. We know that the happiness of others is our own happiness, and we aspire to practice joy on the path of service. We know that every word, every look, every action, and every smile can bring happiness to us. We know that if we practice wholeheartedly, we ourselves may become an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our love and for all species.
We invoke
your name, Shittigarva. We aspire to learn your way of being present where there is darkness, suffering, oppression, so we can bring light, hope, relief, and liberation. We are determined not to forget about or abandon our best to establish contact with those who cannot find a way out of their suffer, those whose cries for help, justice, equality, and human rights are not being heard. We we know that hell can be found. Many places on earth we will do our best not to contribute to creating more hells on, and to help transform the hells that already exist. We will practice in order to realize the quality of perseverance and stability, so that like the earth we can always be supportive and faithful to those in need.
We bow together, the three refuges. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Dwelling in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world. Dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people fully their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma, in myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all people build more full communities to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Sharing the merit, reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness, give rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.
Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Also want to announce that we will celebrate the Lunar New Year on January 31st at 8 p.m. That I believe is a Tuesday. So it's January 31st, 8 p.m. We will celebrate the Lunar New Year. And then on January 2nd, the first Sunday of January, regular January, we will do our own special New Year ceremony as well. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.